Thanks for being here in this mujeresciber 4.0. Cristina Pitarch, Director of Emea in the area of security at Google. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. And Laura Iglesias, CISO at Vodafone Spain. Yes, hello, good afternoon. Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Thanks very much, the three of you, for sharing with us this panel and for helping us reflect and think about all these relevant subjects and work on the analysis of all these subjects. I'd like to know your opinion. I'd like to know what's your view about the situation of the gender gap. Cristina, we'll start with you. Yeah, can you hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. About the gender gap, we at Google, we have a lot of awareness about the subject. But even if there are more and more women, we also know that they only represent like 24% in the cybersecurity sector. So that's a big problem. We have to keep on raising awareness. We have to keep on attracting talent. We need to be more diverse. We want to develop products for all users, and that is impossible to do if we are not diverse from the design point of view. Yes, that's what another speaker was saying, the importance of diversity and how it fosters the advance of cybersecurity. Yes, I think it is important to be talking about that. Yes, the figure that Cristina gave us, 24%, is important. Yes, but yeah, not only that figure is important, but also the fact that there are not enough women in the sector makes it insecure as well. We live in a world that is experiencing an accelerated digitalization. Both companies and institutions depend increasingly more and more from the digitalization, the cloud, the artificial intelligence, etc. And complex things do not get resolved with static recipes. You have to innovate, you have to solve problems, and these demands different perspectives, and you don't get different perspectives if you get the same type of profile in all teams. And there are many studies that show that diversity in teams is profitable as well. There are studies from Gartner and Harvard, and McKinsey as well, that establish a connection between the diversity of a company with an increase in productivity or performance by 40 or 50% compared with companies that are less diverse. So the data is there. There's a gap that is not positive, that makes us less secure and less profitable. I think there's been a positive trend recently. If you compare it to a few years ago, we've moved from 11 to 24%. There are companies such as mine where we are at 30% already in the Department of Cybersecurity, but there's still a long way to go. I think there are three things we have to do. First of all, to give visibility to role models, women that have responsibility positions, and I'm talking about the technological sector. First of all, because young girls can get inspiration from them, and also because it starts to look normal, because there has to come a point in which seeing a woman president is not a novelty. But I still see on job offers that are focused on years of experience, on technical knowledge, but women have got into this field later, so it's difficult to have a great volume of women with a lot of experience. So we need to start hiring more based on potential than on experience. And then there's also a cultural aspect in companies. I think the leaders in organizations are responsible for changing the landscape. If you want equality at the workplace, you need equality at home as well. So you need the support of your partner, but also the society, the fact that a father arrives home early and gets prepares dinner and takes care of the bath of the kids should be considered something normal. Yes, there's still a long way to go, Laura. Yes, you've given us a lot of figures and some data, very interesting data. Katya, what's your view on this? Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to join the panel. We speak about this subject often, but it still requires group conversations and directed actions. I would like to bring forward the following message. We need to talk about the fact that there's not only a gender gap or the digital gender gap as something unique, and we should start talking about the different gender gaps in plural in the digital world, which lead to fewer professionals or female professionals in the digital world. So we are talking about many gaps that all combined lead to women not contributing as they should to the sector. I would also like to bring forward the idea when we're talking about women accessing the internet. Well, but we are improving on that aspect. Yeah, but the gender gap is just the tip of the iceberg. Women not only do not access, but when they do, they don't do it with the right quality. They don't have the right devices, or they are not updated. They don't have the necessary knowledge as men might have. They know less. They have fewer knowledge. They have less information on the digital aspects. As I was saying in the previous presentation, this makes women to get involved less and makes the gap even greater. So there are many impacts on the gender gap that has been transferred to to the digital world. And talking in particular about this gender gap, we are talking about gaps that go beyond the number of women working on technology. We're talking about workplaces that are not friendly and about workplaces that demand women to change instead of the workplaces changing for the women. And in the end, the problem is the gender stereotypes, and this is a recurrent topic, but there are stereotypes, and these stereotypes start when young girls start to create their identities. They start creating a distant identity, an idea that they are less capable to deal with technology, and this translates into that feeling of being not good enough along their lives. So one of the speakers mentioned the importance of role models, and I agree with that, so that girls can later on be part of the technological industry. And speaking about this iceberg, we should also move from the measurement of access, how much women use the tools, how often do they do it. And I go back to my subject and my guide. Let's focus on the digital security of women, because if we demystify technology, we tell them that you're not at risk here. There are risks, but you can be protected. That creates empowerment in women and a desire to learn more, and also a desire to break the bias of self-selection. So maybe with some very basic learnings on cybersecurity, you can start building up. Yeah, and I stop here because otherwise I can talk for hours. I will ask about that later on, because your report is really, really important, and about some of the figures that you mentioned. Cristina, Laura, I'd like to know, how do you perceive in your cases, in your companies, to big technological companies, the gender gap? First of all, I think we have made progress, yes, because everyone now recognizes a gap. In the financial reports of many companies, including mine, the gap, the subject of the gap is mentioned. The salary gap is also an issue that is described, and that is the starting point to start implementing measures. And linked to this data, there are also objectives trying to improve the situation. So in general, that's what I see, that the problem is acknowledged, that it is being measured, it is being made visible, such as in financial statements that the investors read. The change is still slow because the gap is very big, but it is good that companies are putting the focus on this. Cristina, how do you perceive this, and what are the ways to close this gap? Well, at Google, as I mentioned before, there is a lot of awareness about this problem. And we have a responsibility not only to our employees, but also to the communities. The intention is to keep on growing to keep this percentage growing. And we need to work on an education. We have 10 scholarships for women at the University of Malaga on cybersecurity. We announced a few months ago that we created professional certificates of courses of 120 hours, but we need to strengthen the employment capacities of the people. And out of the 10,000 scholarships, half of them are given to women. And that is work that we do for the community so that women are not afraid of technology. So we have many initiatives internally. Every year, we can see it in the reports. We realize that the gap is there, and if we want to be on the top of innovation, we have to take this very seriously. And there are multiple initiatives of coaching, talent sponsorship, focus on diversity when hiring. So many initiatives. From what I see, it is something very common in many companies. And in Spain, I think there is a lot of awareness. Is it enough? Well, maybe not. And probably the reality is that we have started late, and we have to accelerate because the gap is still there. And it might become even bigger if we don't take drastic measures. Yes, we have to take this seriously, Cristina, but it is the fact that you are doing so many things gives us hope. That's why we are here, to put all those ideas together. Katya, you gave us a lot of facts and figures earlier. Globally, the percentage of women that use the internet is 48%. So the gap is 18% globally. Is that lack of access to the technology the cause behind this? What's your opinion? Yeah, the access gap, as you said, is a reference. It gives us a reference, an initial reference of how women fare in terms of the internet and the digital era. And the percentage is not little. It seems to be going down in Latin America. The numbers are positive in terms of the number of the women that are accessing internet, but 16% globally still means a lot of women, many millions. And it is one of the main causes of concern. But I go back to what I was saying earlier. This is the tip of the iceberg of all the discrimination and inequality that comes from the online space and has now digitalized. So there's no one single gender gap, but many gender gaps. The access, what type of access, what information are they reading about, what are the tools they have to defend themselves, and from that I move on to the COVID pandemic, in which we have studies that say that women use the internet less to get empowered. So there was already a gender gap. To check how much the internet is being used to get women empowered, and how is that impacting women and young girls all along their lives. We seem to be making progress, but we are not making so much progress. But maybe we are just measuring how many women are online and how many are being hired in technological position. But whenever women are told that technology is not for them, that's a problem. So, as in the subject of cybersecurity, I would like to talk about people that discuss gender gap, because there are two stereotypes combined that reduce participation. First one is technologies are not for women, they're for men. And the other one is security and protection, is that male characteristic, men are protectors and women are protected. So those two elements combine, and that makes that women do not participate. So, and that leads us to missing information. And the people working to resolve this the problem are mostly men, and they don't consider the experiences of women.
So that is the impact that we are having. We're creating cybersecurity tools that are not adequate for women, and this is a vicious circle, because unless you create a secure web for those experiences, women are gonna draw away from this. They will feel that they are not part of this, they only just partly part of this in some certain spheres, such as WhatsApp or Facebook. So my message, and I would like to close with this, is that we need to talk about many gaps, and once we do this, we will be able to identify different mechanisms, different tools, and resources in order to counteract these issues. Thank you, Katya. Cristina, Laura, Lisa Forte also made reference before to how all this influence has an influence on the result of the products that are offered. What is your take? How can this be shown? How can this lesser representation can be shown when it comes to developing tools, products, etc.? Cristina? Yes, indeed, it has a great impact. Globally speaking, I think I read somewhere that the teams that we do product management, it's about 60% men in Google alone. So this has an impact on how solutions and products are developed. And here there is also a great need for inclusivity. We know, we have said this until we are blue in the face, the presence of women produces better results, and I don't think that that can be discussed anymore. With diversity, you're going to find better solutions than if you don't have that diversity. So having different voices, experiences, and perspectives, which is something that we constantly hear. Not only this sort of information or experience makes a better experience. But if you consider the diversity in the way of thinking, you can have a lot of variety. If you prioritize this sort of inclusion, everything will move forward in a better way. And in my opinion, which I think is based on how things work on Google, a product group has to have that mix of design, technology, business, gender, education, experience, so a lot of variety, because our consumers are global and they are very diverse also. If we don't have the same diversity in the way we develop our products, we will never be able to reach them. And far too often we see products that have been developed on a single idea. They are more masculine, if you like, or they are kind of designed for men and by men, and we can be put off when it comes to using those products and solutions. So we should all take the responsibility and design things that are truly global, because at the end of the day, this is the way the world is going. Consumers are not just divided between men and women, it's all of us. It's a global community, and the more representation we have in the way we develop the product, the closer we will get to the market and the better solutions we will be able to create for real problems. So yes, indeed, I think we're only starting to see some changes in that direction, and I am seeing an increasing number of engineers, people who I work with who may not have that engineering training. And I'm thinking about a colleague, a male colleague, who's a graduate in political science, and he's one of the best managers we have, because it's just about his way of thinking and his way of managing. If we apply this to women, if we manage to take the fear away, and avoid thinking that we cannot do this or that, I think that's also a way of educating our children, our female children, our female friends, etc. And I think we can get to that point. Yes, absolutely, Cristina. No doubt, as you said, with this variety, it can lead to a very different setting. Laura, what can you tell us? How can this development of tools and products have an impact? What's your take? Well, I think there are many examples that we can find, even published on the internet by the press, when you don't take into account gender diversity. And I'm remembering an example. It has nothing to do with cybersecurity. It was of a car manufacturer. Basically, what happened when you do the crash tests using these dummies, the actual type of dummy that used to be used at the driver's side was a dummy that represented a masculine shape and a masculine body. And whenever you had to use a female dummy, it was only compulsory to be used in the passenger seat. And there was a conclusion that women had 40% more, they were 40% more prone to suffering damages or even die when driving, because they didn't take into account gender diversity, not just when it comes to devising the product, but also when testing the product. And I think that can be applied to all fields. When we think about cybersecurity, it is typical for us to think of an attacker who's a male of a given age, range, a given ethnical race, etc. And even the way they think is normally put according to a given set profile. So it is likely that when we follow this logic, we may be making mistakes and that there might be some gaps when it comes to designing security requirements, when it comes to developing projects or products or designing cybersecurity products that will allow us to defend ourselves from this type of attack. So I think it is important to have all different gender considerations into account, and not just gender ones, but also about race, countries, cultures, languages, etc. From the point of view of the security, taking into account the whole range of attackers that you might come across. And sometimes, very often actually, we don't know who the attacker was, but whenever we have been able to see who the attacker was, we have been able to show that it is not always a white male of a certain age, etc. Yes, very good examples showing that not everything has to come down to cybersecurity in terms of examples, but what you told us obviously does open our eyes to the issue that we are dealing with and how everything is interrelated. We have to leave it there. Thank you for your time and dedication, everything you told us. Thank you very much, and congratulations on your achievements in your own professional careers. It is an honor. You are really three big referents. Thank you, Katya. Thank you for the invitation and for having allowed us to share my reflections with Laura and Cristina. We do look forward to many female fora, such as this one. Cristina, thank you for having been with us. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and I have a personal responsibility and commitment to this issue. I hope that after a few years my daughters will not have to live the situation that we are witnessing now, and I am always happy to cooperate since I think this is so important, so I'm pleased to be here. Yes, of course. Thank you. Laura, then again, thank you. Thank you, Monica, Katya, Cristina. It's been a pleasure. Next.